lost to the top job following the firing of Jeff Sessions, despite several other legal experts disagreeing when it comes to the appointment of Matt Whitaker. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harrods looks at the evidence tonight and how it's being received.
The 20-page Justice Department legal opinion backs President Trump's appointment of Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Relying on the Federal Vacancies Reform Act and past precedent, the Office of Legal Counsel found Senate confirmation is not required if the appointment is temporary. The constitutionality of Mr. Whitaker's designation is supported by Supreme Court precedent, by acts of Congress, and by countless examples of executive practice. Under the Justice Department's succession statute, the acting attorney general's job falls to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who until recently oversaw the special counsel Robert Mueller probe. The Office of Legal Counsel found the president may use the Vacancies Reform Act as an alternative, which was recognized and used by Presidents Bush and Obama. On Capitol Hill, attention turned to the impact on special counsel Mueller.
We want to make sure that the acting attorney general does not interfere with the Mueller investigation, and we believe our Republican colleagues will join us.
We know how the president feels about the Mueller investigation, but he's never said he wants to shut it down. I've never heard anybody down there say they want to shut it down.
Before the midterms, Rosenstein was under scrutiny over allegations he discussed secretly recording the president in May 2017 and removing him from office. A Republican House chairman says they still want Rosenstein under oath for a transcribed interview before the Democrats take over.
We're working very hard right now as we speak to get that done.
So you're working with the Justice Department?
We're working with a number of people.
On protecting the Mueller investigation, outgoing Republican Senator Jeff Flake says he will oppose the president's judicial nominees until legislation is brought to the full Senate for a vote. The senator's threat complicates Republican efforts to move the president's nominees forward by the end of the year, Brett.
Captain, thank you.
You're welcome.
More on the acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker. Let's bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. The judge, by the way, wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com on the acting AG that will go online tomorrow. Judge, first of all, great to see you, my friend.
Likewise,
Secondly,
Trace.
the op-ed, and I don't want to give away the goods on your op-ed because everybody's going to love it when it hits .com tomorrow. But it's titled, "Will the real AG stand up?" And your argument is that Matthew Whitaker is legally ineligible. But as you just heard John Roberts say, and you read the report, of course, the DOJ says that he is eligible under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. Your thoughts, Judge?
I was very disappointed to see the lawyers who work for Matthew Whitaker go back to 1866 and look for a precedent there to decide whether or not he was lawfully appointed. I don't care what happened in 1866 because the Congress changed the law in the 1960s and said whoever runs the Justice Department has to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate because we put too much power in their hands. Not only to, not only to supervise 90,000 people, among whom are the 30,000 that work for the FBI, not only to instigate investigations, but to terminate investigations that have already been started. That kind of power can't go to a political hack. How do we know the person is not a political hack? By subjecting them to Senate confirmation, in which their ideas about the law and their views about who should be prosecuted and who should not be prosecuted can be aired to the satisfaction of the Senate. That's not me. That's the congressional statute that was written in the 1960s, which the Justice Department conveniently overlooks.
But we know now, Judge, but Fox is reporting saying, there was a lot of speculation that President Trump just did this, right? He liked Matthew Whitaker and he just stuck him in there. But now we know that he did some due diligence. He went and he asked the DOJ. He did some looking around. It wasn't willy-nilly. And he figured out, or they told him, yeah, you can do this. This is totally fine.
So you have two statutes. You have one that says whenever there's a vacancy in a principal department of the government, of which the Department of Justice is one, the president can appoint whoever he wants as long as that person has worked for the government for 90 days. You then have a specific statute that just refers to the Department of Justice, which says whenever there's a vacancy in the Department of Justice, the number 2 person who's been nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, shall fill the role. So when you have two statutes that disagree, which one do you follow, the general or the specific? Very clear. You follow the specific. Congress could not have been more precise when it said the number 2 person, the Deputy Attorney General, takes over. Look, all of this is going to be moot because the president will soon nominate someone, and presumably the Senate will confirm whoever he wants to be Attorney General. The problem comes with decisions made by Mr. Whitaker in the interim, because when his position, not if, when his position is found to be legally ineligible, those decisions will become null and void. Put that toothpaste back in the tube, Trace.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Judge. You're clearly saying in so many words the Democrats are banging the pots and pans because they think that Whitaker might do something in this interfere with the Robert Mueller investigation. That's kind of where this goes. I got to go. I'll give you the last 10 seconds on this.
The Democratic fear is shared by a lot of Republicans as well.
Yeah. Judge Andrew Napolitano, good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Trace.
Whitaker is going to ask the ethics the ethics people whether he should be recused, so I think that answers it. Doesn't matter what the Democrats think if he's going through that process.
A lot of the questions involving Mr. Whitaker and the acting AG could be eliminated if we had a nominee. My understanding is the White House is starting to look into that.
I don't think it's fair to the man to bash him before he even has a chance to find the men's room. He's done nothing that should make anybody worry.
Another classic. Members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a strong reaction on the criticism directed at the acting AG, Matthew Whitaker, as his appointment faces its first legal challenge from the state of Maryland. My next guest is on the Judiciary Committee, Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee. And, sir, good morning to you. Welcome back to our program here.
Thank you. Good morning.
What's the question at hand for Whitaker?
Well, the question at hand involves whether or not he can appropriately be appointed as interim Attorney General. This is an issue on which there are reasonable arguments on both sides. I'm looking forward to the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel releasing a memorandum that it's apparently prepared on this subject. The Office of Legal Counsel has some of the best lawyers in the government on this issue, and I look forward to fleshing out their arguments.
With that as a backdrop, do you support him or not?
Yes, I certainly support him, and the question that will be addressed in this Office of Legal Counsel memorandum is whether or to what extent, in what way, the president has authority to appoint him as interim Attorney General.
But you believe the president has the authority to appoint the Attorney General at this
I think that's the central question. I think, like I said, I think there are legitimate arguments on both sides. I think this could end up being a close legal question, which is why I want to see the OLC memorandum.
Okay, interesting. We kind of had a split decision here in our program yesterday on that very issue. Senator Feinstein writes this, the Democrat from California. The circumstances surrounding Attorney General Sessions' departure raise serious questions, including whether the appointment is lawful and the possible impact on Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. It's critically important that we understand why the Attorney General was forced out of his position. I guess you're kind of asking that same question, aren't you?
No, that's actually not the same question I'm asking at all.
So?
I don't think that's the legitimate question. Whether the president decides it's time for a new course correction really is his call and his alone to make. That's not our call. If they want to quibble about the extent of the president's power to name an interim Attorney General, that's a different question. I don't think that's really attached to the question of what the president's subjective mindset was when he made that decision.
Okay, what she and some Democrats, the case they're making is quite obvious. They're afraid that he's going to interfere with the Mueller probe. And now you got Senators Coons and Flake with this proposal before the Senate as to whether or not the Mueller probe should be protected. Is that a good idea? Would you support that, Senator?
No. I've voted against similar legislation earlier this year. I think that improperly interferes with the president's constitutional authority as the head of the executive branch. I would not support that. And look, the fact that somebody has fears about what somebody might do in office is not a good reason to suggest that that person should not hold that office. If they've got another legal argument, that's fine, but that strikes me as a particularly bad argument.
Okay, what is your sense as the new Congress comes to Washington about whether or not this has moved forward? Or do you get a sense, based on some of the reports, that written questions could be at hand right now for the West Wing? And if so, are we closer to the end?
Or can you say that?
To the end of the Mueller investigation?
Yes.
I certainly hope that we are at the end of it. From everything I'm hearing, we're likely to be close to the end. And I look forward to reviewing his report. I'd like to see him wrap it up and to see what he has to say.
Okay, you're making a case, too, for criminal justice reform. I just want to give you a chance to tell our audience about what that's all about and how you think it could move forward in this new Congress.
This is a project I've been working on for 8 years, ever since I've been in the United States Senate. This is a bipartisan effort to give federal judges some much-needed discretion in a number of cases, particularly involving relatively low-level, nonviolent drug offenders who sometimes get caught in a web that sometimes results in ridiculously large, aggressive minimum mandatory sentences. There's a young man in Utah named Weldon Angelos who was sentenced to 55 years in prison for selling 3 small user quantities of marijuana in a 72-hour period. It's examples of cases like that where we need to give judges additional discretion and let them be judges. That's what our bill does, and we're looking forward to meeting with President Trump at 3:30 today to discuss that.
Will he support it?
I hope that he will. I have confidence that he might, and if he does, I predict that this will pass out of both houses of Congress and be signed into law this year by President Trump.
We'll be waiting for more news from the West Wing on that today. Senator, thank you for your time. Mike Lee's the Republican from Utah. By the way, how does it feel to have Mitt Romney as the junior senator from your state?
I'm looking forward to that, as is Senator-elect Romney. He told me that at his age he welcomes any title that comes with the word junior.
Right.
Skip the circuit court, go right to the Supreme Court, because this is now messing with the democratic process.
Well, it's like a bad fairy tale where the witch appears in the garden and says, you had 3 days to pour over all these ballots and tell us who the senator is for the state of Florida. Here's the problem. And this comes from the Miami Herald, during a manual recount, election workers have to examine overvotes and the undervotes, and then they're going to make a determination. Okay, what happens in Palm Beach now that the county has missed the machine recount? A spokesman said, by law, counties should continue counting past the deadline so the final tallies can be included in official results. They're due on November 18th and will be certified by the state on the 20th. Well, they missed that. If Palm Beach doesn't make the deadline, the county's we know what happens. They're now forced into a recount. This is a disaster. Palm Beach has approximately 5,950 ballots with overvotes and undervotes in the Senate race.
They're never going to make up the. They're never going to make up the difference. So even
What's
if all of those, it's 17,000. I believe the difference is 12 to 17,000
between Scott and
Nelson. It's not a huge amount. It's certainly not as much. And give me the exact number, please. It's certainly not the same differential that DeSantis beat Gillum by. DeSantis had a larger margin, which is kind of curious.
Again, we're seeing that same span as we saw in Arizona, where the governor wins handily, and then the senatorial candidate, the Republican, suddenly comes up short. That doesn't happen in most elections. People vote straight ticket. They don't split ballot like this. How many people split ballot? I want to hear from you. 855-40-LAURA. When you go in, do you split ballot?
Yeah. Do you ever vote? Well, do you ever vote for one race but not the other? And do you believe that under or over votes should be re-examined
or thrown out
to discern the intent of the voter? I think that's crazy. This again is these rules. You would have thought that Rick Scott. I'm really mad at Rick Scott. He was governor of the state and did not fix this.
There's a 12,000 vote span that separates them.
I know most things off the top of my head, but not everything.
You're amazing.
But not everything.
It's because you don't vote.
You know what I say to young brains out there? I tell all my friends with the young brains, okay, I got an aging brain. My brain's like now going in the wrong direction. You guys should snap to. Got to know this stuff.
Yeah, but you know what? Her secret is she's using an ingredient found in jellyfish.
Prevagen is good. I love those jellyfish. I collect them on the beach and just eat them in a blender. I put them in a blender and I just eat them. They're great smoothies. There's a little sting on the way down.
I was about to say, I think you've been putting the stingrays in the blades just to add my little 2 cents. Now, the Palm Beach, I love this. Palm Beach Election Tabulation Center was empty Thursday. Empty. Nobody was there. They sent everybody home. The Palm Beach set aside $11 million to buy new equipment. But Boucher, the woman who's the election supervisor there, said the county hasn't yet purchased the machines because the state needs to resolve a question about voting system compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The constant lies, half-truths, delays, missing deadlines.
Okay, so
they should shut them down, disqualify all the votes.
DeSantis is the next governor. Now it's up to him to fix this, okay? We have a great Ingram angle tonight on tap. You do not want to miss it. Friday Follies tonight could be one for the ages. Okay. Do you think I don't think I've ever laughed as hard as I did last night on the show, during the show. It was slightly embarrassing for me, but I tried to hold it together. I'm talking about a segment that we will post. Rich will make sure it's posted on Facebook.
Oh, boy.
and on LauraIngram.com. We had a millennial vapor, a kid from Barstool Sports, who was
Tommy Smokes,
Schiarelli or whatever his name. He's actually really funny. But anyway, he was on the show with a renowned pediatrician, who was, I think, warning us about the dangers of vaping and what it does to your lungs. Okay, so the vaping lungs, terrible for you. So he had, let's just say he had a problem refraining from coughing during the segment while he's trying to argue that it's fine for you.
Well, he's sipping from 2 Juuls. He's got 2 vape sticks up to his mouth, inhaling during the segment. And he's like, yeah, Laura, I know. It's good for you. It's fun. I'm cool. I pick up chip. It was ridiculous. It was really like a comedy routine, I have to say. And the women in the newsroom were like, if I were in that studio, I would kick him off the chair. They were incensed by him. But anyway, it was a very funny segment.
So you got to watch it. Go watch it on Facebook. Put it on our Facebook page, please, and also on LauraIngram.com.
He is the poster boy for the not-to-vape movement.
The Barstool Sports guys are very funny. I don't tune into the sports media very much. But what a great...
this is the second time that the Ingram angle has gone viral on Barstool Politics. The first time was when we did our votes. If Snipes hadn't been late, what did we say Tuesday night about this Snipes woman? She's just incompetent.
Purposely incompetent in this case.
And Brad Todd, who was representing Rick Scott, appeared on an MSNBC show and was grilled about chicanery in Broward and Palm Beach. Listen.
Brad, your candidate may ultimately win here, and yet he has really sort of embarrassed himself by saying all these things that aren't true, by alleging that this process was going to hurt him. In fact, before these numbers were just canceled out, as we heard, the Democratic margin was decreasing.
Wait a minute. Every time when you were a kid and you said the dog ate my homework, the dog really never ate your homework. And they really didn't have this issue of 2 minutes ahead of time. What happened was Rick Scott gained 779 votes in Broward County, and they decided maybe that's not a good thing. Let's go the other way.
It is a travesty. I've got to...
It's remarkable.
Well, again, the outcome will be the same, but I like to focus on lessons going forward. And in this situation, as in the Georgia push to do a new election altogether in the Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp race for governor, they're using this narrative to try to bolster their rolls, their registrations to vote in 2020 and any other remaining races that are tight in the state. They think that if they can hold out a little longer, as you saw with some of these California seats, if you can extend the voting or extend the counting long past Election Day, you can perhaps change outcomes. That's what we saw in California. And I'm not alleging fraud in California. I'm just saying the longer the votes go on, the Democrats seem to have more measures in place and more strategies in place to try to find the votes that they want or they need. So they think that they can do this.
At the end of this MSNBC interview, Brad Todd said something very interesting. Again, he represents Governor Rick Scott in that recount down in Florida. Listen what he said. Very insightful.
Is it that they're incompetent, which is, we've found that. We're not here to say they're good or bad, that we found incompetence, or is it that they're very competent at stealing elections, which is what you and Rick Scott have been alleging?
Thing. Fraud hides in the shadows of noncompliance. That's where it goes. And we have a string of noncompliance out of Broward County. We have a string of noncompliance in Palm Beach County. And therefore, you will never know if it wasn't fraud. You know why? Because the reason we have these anti-fraud laws in place is so everyone can know for certain there was no fraud. And when election administrators don't abide by anti-fraud laws, well, we'll never know.
Fraud hides in the shadows of non-compliance. Great line.
Of course, there's no transparency.
You can't track it. Well, I don't know. Oh, we were late. We were 2 minutes late. Come on. Brenda Snipes, the eyes of the country are on you in Broward, and you're 2 minutes late after weeks of counting? Weeks. The election's long over. It's 10 days since the election.
But meanwhile, you have other people who just concede